Hey there, it's Daniel from GrowYourMusicStudio.com, and in this live Quaran-Stream, we're going to talk about a number of topics: online lessons, how you can thrive over the coming months, and answering dozens of questions that I have received from the community over the last few days. So, to begin with, I want to address the fact that many of the questions that were submitted had kind of a similar tone and feel to them. So if you're here and you're listening for your question, understand that I received a ton of questions that were very, very similar. And so I'm going to read a few that kind of are around similar topics. So if I don't read your exact question, that's the reason why. I'm going to address all these topics. It's just that some of these are going to be very, very similar. And just a quick question, because I already see a bunch of people coming into the room. Just type in the chat if the sound is off or you're having difficulty hearing. I'm testing a new lighting and sound and video rig, and this is honestly my first time using it. So if the sound is off or you can't hear or you're seeing me talk but not hearing anything, just type in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going, and for the next hour, everyone's only going to see me talking but not hear anything. So just type in the comments there. Also, just even as we get going here, I announced this on Monday of this week. It's Thursday of this week. I don't even know what day it is anymore. We've been locked down for a week and I'm already losing track of time. But since Monday, a number of guides for Zoom and online lessons have been published. And I was intending on this call to spend some time kind of going over that. But given the plethora of resources that have either been created by bloggers or video bloggers in the space, and even just people graciously donating their resources, in some of the music teacher Facebook groups, I'm going to focus a little bit less on that since so many things have been published, and I'm actually going to kind of start by talking about that when I get into the questions. So I've opted not to do that because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I've read some of these guides, even one that was published today by Wendy Stevens, and they're really, really good. And I think that hold on, I gotta mute my. I'm getting tons of messages saying, "Hey, where's the live stream?" Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, so I don't intend to reinvent the wheel here. Now, as we get going, here's the very first thing I want to talk about, and this isn't really in response to any question. This is the overall perspective I'm taking on this situation. And I got to tell you, I'm taking a risk here even talking about this. I've gotten a little bit of hate mail this week because I've even talked about the coronavirus using the platform that I've created with Grow Your Music Studio. I've gotten some hate mail, just people saying like, how dare you address this or talk about this thing at a time like this. So I realize that there's a little bit of a danger in speaking about this, but it is honestly just dominating everyone's thinking right now. And the truth of the matter is that we as a family were actually a little bit ahead of the game. And weeks before this kind of hit the national consciousness, we were a little bit aware of it because we were actually in the process of planning a trip to Italy for a wedding that we've since had to cancel that trip, and the wedding has been canceled. And so we were reading a lot of data and things before even the media really started picking up on it and just going, running it 24/7. So the danger here is this, that if it sounds like I'm downplaying it, I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail from people saying that I'm not taking this seriously. If I talk about this in a particular way, I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail from people saying that I'm just fear-mongering and blowing this out of proportion. So understand that my goal with this Quaran-Stream is simply to address the thinking and the thoughts that I'm seeing in the community right now. That is really my only goal here. I'm not trying to make a political or health statement. So with that disclaimer, I want to jump into what I actually believe is the most dangerous thing right now. And that is believing what you think. During this time, your mind is going to make suggestions to you. And if you have any doubt that this might be true, just think about the thoughts you've been thinking over the last week. Think about how differently you're thinking right now, even from 1 week ago. Go and look in music teacher forums, studio owner forums. Look at the wide range of things that people are asking and thinking right now. All of this is a result of thinking, okay? And you're going to hear things from your clients right now. Things like, hey, we're thinking of taking a break. What should you do with that? What should you think when you hear that? So here's a range of responses that you could think. The Smith family said that they're thinking of taking a break. Everybody must feel this way. This family is out of work. Everyone's probably really hurting right now. I wonder if we're going into a recession. Everyone's probably going to stop spending now. Like everyone's just going to like hunker down. I'm sure millions of people are losing their jobs and this is just going to be terrible. What I will say to you is that because you're thinking about it, and if you continue to think about it, you're going to believe it. And then because you believe it, you're going to be thinking about it. And it's this endless cycle of what you think is what you think about. And what you think about is what you think. And eventually it turns into a belief and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And frankly, this is how markets work. If you go look at a stock market chart, you're not only seeing an index of price, you're seeing an index of what investors believe to be true about the future. And the same thing can happen to us on a micro level. The same thing that's happening at the macro level can happen to us on a micro level, and we can begin to create a self-fulfilling prophecy in our own thinking and within our own industry. Okay? Now, here's another range of responses that you could have in response to all of this, and in response to what you're hearing from your clients right now. One, there's so many people stuck indoors right now. I wonder if they're getting bored. I know that I am. And I tend to be a homebody, and already I'm like, man, I go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, and I'm already missing it. It's only been a week. Another thing you could think, I wonder if parents are looking for things for their kids to do. And if you look in the Facebook groups, you see a lot of this already, like people making these sorts of comments. That's part of the range of responses that I'm seeing out there in the community right now. I wonder if because everybody is freaking out, this is a big one, I wonder if right now Facebook ad costs are the lowest that they've been in years. I wonder if now would be a good time to educate myself on Facebook ads and get going on that. By the way, the answer to both of those things is yes. Facebook ads are cheaper than they've ever been because I'm still running ads for some of my premium clients, and I'm running ads myself. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if any of those 6 statements are actually true, except for that last one. And I could be wrong. It could change tomorrow. Who knows? Okay? But which do you think is more helpful? Of those 6 responses, we had 3 at the beginning that were primarily negative, and we had 3 at the end that were more question based. Which is more helpful? Which one would get me or you moving? Which one's going to lift me up? Which one will tear me down? And what I will say to you, I'm just going to give you a brief thought here just to think about. I have a 7-year-old. What would happen if every day when my 7-year-old woke up, I said, hey, listen, man, the world is an awful place. It's full of awful people. They're out to get you. I'm hearing that people are saying that they're having trouble hearing, and I'm seeing more than one person say it. I don't know if it's my microphone or if I'm cutting in and out. It could be... Okay, Ashley says she can hear me. Perfect. All right. It might just be a connection issue, in which case it might just be on the other end. I'm going to keep going unless I see a ton of people telling me that they can't see or hear. So anyway, we'll keep going. So if I woke up each day and said to my 7-year-old, the world is full of awful people, they're out to get you, you can't trust people, life is just a struggle and then you die, okay? Picture that child growing up into an adult, and picture, instead, every day I wake up and say, hey, listen, the world is full of people, and honestly, there are a few bad seeds out there, but for the most part, people are good and genuine. And oftentimes, the experience that you put out in the world is the experience you get back. And so if you generally look at people as a positive thing and as a positive force, and you go out into the world and move towards people in service and kindness, the world is really going to respond to that in a really kind and generous way. There's no way of knowing which one of those 2 views is correct. There's no way of knowing. But which one of those children is going to grow up to be a happy, functional adult? Here's the point. you can do the same thing to yourself every day. And if you primarily respond to the situation with those first three things, oh, we might be going into recession, oh, we better lock down on spending, things are probably going to get really bad. I don't know if we're going to be in here for weeks or for months. This could get terrible. We could lose the business. If that's what you're telling yourself all the time, I'm telling you, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if on the other hand, you're looking at this as an opportunity for change and growth and development, you're going to have a much different experience of the next couple months. Even today, I got an email from a client. He might actually be on the thing here, on the live stream here. And he said that he's having difficulty remaining objective and that he is kind of freaking out right now. And then in the very same email, he said, but I've only lost 3 students and out of many, and there's only 2 that have even put up any kind of objection to online lessons. But I don't know what it's going to be like going forward. And it was that little thing there right at the end. He's leaving that seed of doubt in his mind. Nothing has really happened all that bad. And he actually said that even since the quarantine started, and he's in a place that is actually under a pretty serious lockdown, he's gotten a student with his old funnel that doesn't even address the fact that we're kind of in a nationwide panic mode right now. And my point is that if you, and I'm going to move on to the questions after this, but I really wanted to frame this whole Quaran-Stream with this thought, that if you keep telling yourself the sky is falling, and if you're feeding your mind with those thoughts, you're going to end up believing them. It will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you remain objective, and instead of making definitive statements, you're asking questions about the world right now, and asking questions about your clients, and asking questions about what might be true and what might not be true, admitting that we don't know what's happening, and therefore there's a ton of room for creativity. If that's the primary way that you face the world right now, I promise you the experience of the next couple months is going to be a lot better for you. So, having said that, I want to move into now answering some questions. And the very first one, and again, I'm going to bring up this kind of fundamental view, and I'm going to keep bringing this back. It's why I wanted to start with that idea, because throughout this entire experience, I'm going to kind of keep referencing that. Do you have a fixed mindset that is not growth-oriented, and you're just assuming you know what's going to be true, or do you have a opportunity growth mindset, one that asks questions? That's kind of the two thoughts. And as we go through each of these questions, I'm going to kind of highlight how you could respond to each question within those mindsets. So, very first thing, everyone's asking about online group lessons. So, there are a lot of resources out there. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, Joy Morin published a really fabulous guide on Monday. Tim Topham released one Tuesday. Wendy Stevens released one this morning. I've seen multiple people doing live streams like this. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting her name. It's so awful. The woman at Colorful Keys, she did a Q&A just yesterday or the day before, and she addressed this. There are tons of people being super generous in the Facebook forums right now that there are tons of people in the Facebook forums who are just releasing things. A couple of my clients sent me some guides that they made, and I released them on my email list yesterday and just gave them away for free to 4,000 people. So there are a lot of resources out there. So I don't really want to reinvent the wheel. But for those who might be watching who have not seen any of this stuff yet, what I will basically say is that my approach to all this, what I would recommend at this point, is to get Zoom Pro. It's a very inexpensive subscription service, and there's a reason why you have to get Zoom Pro. The reason I recommend Zoom Pro is it's going to be the most versatile and most robust platform that you can use right now, especially if you're teaching online group lessons. And the reason is that Zoom Pro has a feature called Breakout Rooms. And what I recommend you do with these Breakout Rooms is simply this. You have your phone, your smartphone, or a laptop, or an iPad set up in your teaching space, kind of pointing at you, so that people can see you. And then if you have a single student, all they have to do is have a similar setup on their end, and that's that. Very simple. For group lessons, what you'll do is invite everybody to the same meeting room. And when you need to work individually with a student, you can pull them out of the group experience into a breakout room so that you don't disturb the other students in the main room. So you could almost, if you want to picture it, you could almost picture it as like a physical teaching space where maybe you have a classroom of children and perhaps you're evaluating each child one by one, and you have an assistant, that's in the main classroom, and you pull the child to like a soundproofed practice room and have them perform for you. That's essentially what's happening with the breakout rooms in Zoom Pro. And so that honestly is the biggest piece of advice that I have. It's pretty simple. All you need is a computer and a smartphone. If you have a computer, you will need a webcam with a microphone on it, or you'll need some sort of attached microphone. Now, another question came in. I'm actually going to read it because it was a little bit longer. And it's along the same lines as that question, but it had a nuance to it I thought might be really helpful for people. So I'm just going to read this question here. I am a private piano teacher. Do you recommend a camera setup that shows my full body at the piano, or just a face view to give instructions? What is the best way to set up a camera for online piano lessons? How can I get the camera to show my fingers and keys? I started doing FaceTime lessons and I found, okay, don't need to worry about that. So there is one more thing that you could do. And Kelly just said you can't use the breakout room without a laptop or PC. So that's very helpful information. And again, this is why I love the community so much, because it's going to correct a lot of misinformation that gets spread unwittingly by people like me. So anyway, going back to this question here, if you want to get fancy with your setup, and I've seen people saying that they're doing this, they actually have two devices. So they'll set up maybe the laptop or PC to point primarily at their face, and then they have their smartphone and they put it next to the piano and they log their smartphone into the same room, and then the student comes into the room, so you actually have three windows going, and the student can see your face as you're talking, and they can see your hands if you play for them to demonstrate something. And of course, I realize not everyone's doing piano. Yesterday when I released that one guide, or 2 days ago when I released the guide, I actually released the guide that one of my clients who teaches cello, something that she created. And very similarly, you could do the same thing. PC or laptop pointed at your face, having a second device pointed at your hands, which will be especially helpful, I think, for instruments like cello, any stringed instrument, where that specific finger work is perhaps a little more necessary than on the piano, speaking as a piano teacher myself. So that's that. Moving on to the second question, I'm just going to read it right here. By the way, a lot of great comments being made in the chat right now. A lot of good advice there. If you have a question, please ask it. I will more than happily interrupt what I'm doing here to address something I'm seeing on screen. If I catch it on my phone, it's very, very small. But right now they're giving away codes where you get where you get a certain percentage off or a certain dollar amount off signing up for Zoom Pro. So that's pretty cool. Second question. I am a cello teacher. Some of the students I teach do not have a very good ear for pitch. The primary way that I usually address this is to play with them in the lessons. This won't work because of the lag time with online lessons. How do teachers address this issue with online lessons? Two thoughts. One, just this morning, I saw someone talking about how there's an advanced audio setup that you can go into the audio options. That probably isn't going to address a lag issue, but I do want to say that if you're really getting bummed out by the quality of the video, you might either consider upgrading your stream speed or messing with the settings. Even within Zoom, a long time ago when I first started using Zoom, years ago when I first started using Zoom, I didn't realize that you can enable HD on the platform. So a lot of the early videos I did looked like total garbage because they were super grainy and it was really dim. And now when I use Zoom, I have this enable HD feature turned on, plus I got a better camera and it looks a lot better. So just word of the wise. However, there's a second answer I want to give, and it's a little more nuanced and a little bit more to that creativity thing that I was talking about earlier at the very beginning of the stream here. This gives us all a unique opportunity to question everything that we've done in our teaching career up to this point. The thing about being experienced is that you tend to rely on the things that you've always done. And what I would say is at this time, we actually can begin to re-examine some of the sacred cows of our industry. We can begin to re-examine some of our beliefs of what is true about education, about the format. Sorry, I was looking at some of the things that were coming in on the chat. This format change, switching to online lessons, could cause us to switch up our teaching style, find new ways to address problems. So for instance, with this particular teacher, the way that she has always addressed a problem is to play with the student. This is no longer an option. This is actually a creative opportunity to find a different way to solve this problem and perhaps make the student rely a little bit more on their own ingenuity and creativity instead of us jumping in like helicopter teaching and solving the problem for them with this way that's always worked. Okay, so it could force a teaching style change. It could force us to innovate. It could force us to rely on a different tool or technique. And this actually happened to me when I started teaching group lessons. So I started teaching group lessons in 2008. If this is something I talk about quite a bit, so I'm not going to bore with the whole story of that. But a lot of the problems that I had struggled with for years up to that point went away because I couldn't do it the way that worked. So in many cases, the old way that I was doing things, language that I chose to use, ways that I help kids overcome problems, ways that I chose to teach certain concepts, all these things that were working, I couldn't do them anymore because I was in a format change. And it forced me to get creative. It forced me to become a better teacher. And I became a much more complete teacher because I had now been in two environments, a single lesson environment and a group lesson environment. And even over time that changed because I went from teaching primarily 3 or 4 kids to 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6. And so even the differences that I had to come up with between 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 were pretty substantial in some cases. So look at this as an opportunity to investigate what you're doing. This is forcing us to make changes that we probably should have been making all along. And we should look at this as an opportunity, not necessarily as a curse. We can look at it as a curse, but again, it's that fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And of course, we don't like change. I think that is a thought of the human condition. We like to sit back and be comfortable, but sometimes change, when it's forced upon us, is the best thing that we can do. So I want to move on from this question and go on to the next one. I'm going to read it right here. What if parents want to pull out of lessons and or not pay? I have a policy that requires a school year commitment and paying for 2 weeks after lessons are dropped, but I really don't have a way to enforce it, and I really need the income. Parents of my under 10 group would need to be closely involved in the home lesson, videotaping their child play their songs, etc. And it's hard for them to get involved with their child's practice and home assignments as it is. So there's 2 issues here that I want to address. And actually, before I even move forward, I'm seeing a ton of stuff come in. I'm going to come back and check these comments here in just a second. So let me finish answering this question, then I'm going to hit some of the comments here in the chat. And I don't know. I was thinking I might go a half hour to 45 minutes. We might be here a couple hours, folks. So hang tight. So anyway, 2 issues here. Parents pulling out and not paying. And second, the demands that are being placed on parents. So right off, I would suggest that the first thing, parents wanting to pull out of lessons potentially, might be driven by the second thing. If we're putting a lot of additional demands on parents at this time, other than the fact that we're asking them to move to online lessons, this is probably not the time to be rocking the boat and asking for additional commitments from the parents, even if we all are stuck at home at this point. So for the first, I also want to say that I've already read reports in the news of businesses doing some extraordinary things at this time. For instance, delaying mortgage payments, banks. I said I'm not making any political statements, but the last entity or corporation type in the world that I was expecting to be generous at this point in time are banks. Their business model is pretty set, and we can pretty much expect a certain thing from them, all right? Now, don't overinterpret that statement. But banks voluntarily delaying mortgage payments, landlords giving rent relief on their commercial properties, Amazon suspending delivery on non-essential items. Like, there are a lot of things going on right now that are just really out of the ordinary because these are not normal times, okay? So to suggest to families right now that they owe you like an additional 2 weeks of if they decide to quit, I just don't think that's a card that I would play right now, because even if people did abide by that, or you kind of reminded people in your studio that that's the case, so don't quit right now, they're never going to forget that. And there might be irreparable damage done to the trust that you've built up in your studio. So I'm not just saying that for this situation. Honestly, for everyone watching right now, I would be very careful about the way that you're communicating at this time, and I would be very careful about, I would double and triple check when you're sending out emails if you're asking for additional favors, more demands, reminding people of policies, just be sure not to be tone deaf at this time. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is that I'm debating whether I want to even kind of go here. Yeah, I kind of already covered it here, just looking at my notes, because I did a couple hours of prep for this thing this morning. I'll just kind of wrap this up by saying that I'd be very careful about putting additional demands on families at this point, because I think that we just don't know the mental state of any one person that's reading our email, and it could be taken in a very different way than what we intended it. Email is already kind of a reduced form of communication. It's already kind of a terse, brusque form of communication, and anything that comes across as tone deaf at this point could be really damaging in terms of the reputation we have. So give me a second here. I'm just going to read through some of the comments. Let's see. Thanks for your patience, folks, because I'm just reading through here the comments and seeing if there's questions or... Nate said it's been really beneficial to not be able to point to the page to sharpen my students' skills for understanding instructions like the third beat to the fourth measure. So forcing you to change and reevaluate the way you're thinking about how you talk. Let's see, people just being helpful to one another. Love you guys, that's great. Let's see. Ooh, good question from Jesse. For online lessons, would you charge your regular rates? Absolutely, 100%. And later in the stream, I'm going to actually talk about a complete marketing plan. I'm being very serious. A complete marketing plan for right now. And it's actually a heck of a lot easier than you might think. So stick around for that. Or you can watch the replay if you have to go somewhere. Let's see. Lorraine said, you started to talk about the time lag, talked about HD quality, did not come back to the lag issue. I might have moved on from that, but I think my thought there is that there's really no way around the lag issue. Even if you have a super high-powered connection to the internet, there is still going to be some latency issues. Ping is what it's called. And it's very rare that both parties are at or near zero ping. So unless you're in that very, very tiny minority of people that are close enough to a local substation where you have essentially 0 millisecond ping, you're not going to be able to overcome that lag issue. So at this point, trying to play along with a student is probably right out. So we're going to have to find different ways to help students. Let's see. Good, Carrie. That's great. Okay. Oh yeah, Maria makes a really good point. A bonus that you can give people right now is that you can record these Zoom lessons. And that's something that you could I actually hadn't even thought of that yet. You could talk about that as a value add for parents at this point. So we'll get to that in just a second. Let me keep reading through these comments. I'm almost through them all. You all are awesome. This is great. Thanks for sticking with me. Is there a way to have 2 different rooms going at the same time if you have 2 private lessons booked with 2 different teachers at the same time? That is so interesting, Steph, because that was actually the very next question. And I wanted to address this. I got a ton of questions about the function of Zoom. How does this feature work? Can you explain more about this? How do you set it up? How many accounts would a larger academy need? Like these sorts of things. So at this point, I'm going to say that I can help with Zoom where I have direct knowledge, and I think we've kind of reached the limits of that at this point. What I would say is that seriously, just going to Zoom and putting in a support ticket for them at this time and just asking some of these questions, honestly, they get back to you really, really fast. I've been a Zoom Pro customer for years, and their support is really, really good. I would maybe even call into their sales line. Sometimes these places have like a sales line, and the pickup there is a lot faster than customer support. So I would call into support. What I will say is that if you had to go out and do research on like 8 different pieces of software right now, well, what about Skype? What about FaceTime? What about Zoom? What about Whereby? What about Google Hangouts? Like if you're having to do research on all of these, that would be an overwhelming, monstrous task. I am just going on record as officially saying that Zoom is all you need. You don't need to look into a ton of different software. Just go with Zoom, contact support, make a list of questions before you do, get them all answered, and you can find out if it works. However, Steph, having said that, I think that if you're doing one-to-one lessons, there's a limit of 40 minutes per meeting, and you could use a free account. And what I would recommend having your teachers do in your academy is set up those appointments directly with the student and have kind of their dedicated meeting room code. Again, if I'm wrong, people correct me in the chat. That's part one. Part two is that unless you're doing group, I really don't know if you would need to use the pro function, though the pro function does have some really neat features that could be really, really helpful. But if you have an academy with 10 teachers and you're getting pro for each of those, that's running $150 a month. If you have 10 teachers, that's probably a cost you can afford to bear. But again, look through the features, figure out and figure out what works best for you. But like I said, my hesitation here in injecting too much of my own opinion or my own kind of faulty knowledge about Zoom is that I run the risk of disseminating bad information or perpetuating bad information if I've read it somewhere else and I think it's true, but it's not. So that's where I would really say like going to Zoom at this point is really, really helpful. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And this is the big one. And I'm really appreciative that everyone stuck around because we're about half hour in here. And this is where we're really going to get into probably at least half the questions that came in I'm going to address with this very next question. And I got a ton of questions. So I'm going to read this question. I'm not reading everyone's question. I'm only going to read this one and I think one more. And even if your question isn't being read, I'm going to address a ton of the other questions that surrounded this topic. So here's the question. Many of my students' families want to take a break for a month due to the evolving situation with COVID-19 and the new isolation reality. Many do not want online piano lessons but want to cancel. They are, quote unquote, overwhelmed. As a traveling piano teacher, I've always catered to my clients, providing in-home lessons. In a way, this can continue via Skype and FaceTime, but currently they're homeschooling their kids and it seems like another chore to set up and commit to online lessons. Should I offer a week off until they adjust to this new reality? Others are happy to try for a few weeks only, as they've already paid for March's lessons. It's very frustrating. I'm doing my best to offer lessons at new time slots. And another person literally just wrote in at like 8:45 my time this morning. Most of my students have agreed to temporarily switch to online lessons during this time, but a handful of families are not warming up to the idea. Some have said they'll think about it, and one has not responded at all. How can I approach these unsure families to encourage them to make the switch? And like I said, I've got a lot of questions like this. So I want to talk to you about two marketing realities: internal marketing and external marketing. And we're going to cover these each in turn. And this is going to take a while, I think. There's the internal reality of marketing, what you're saying and doing inside your studio. And then the external reality, which is what you are doing to the world at large now. And I don't know, you might not even be thinking right now about the world at large. That's okay. Again, if we go back to what I said at the beginning of the video, we have a temptation right now to have a very fixed, pessimistic mindset, or we can take a creative growth mindset that asks questions instead of stating facts about what we believe to be true about reality. Again, I want to opt for that second reality, and it's this. I found in my studio with communication that most problems can be avoided simply by not, and this is going to sound bad at first, but give me a second to explain, by not giving people a choice. And I'm being 100% serious with this right now. What I have noticed over the years, and I've been coaching studio owners publicly for 5 years now, and longer before I kind of had an online presence or had a website and all these sorts of things. What I've noticed with studio owners is a tendency to seek consensus with their families. They assume that they have to figure out if families are going to go along with their plans or not. They go out there kind of asking, what do you want right now? And while it's good to have a question-based mindset, which is kind of what I talked about, we want to make sure we're actually asking the right questions, okay? Because if we go out seeking consensus and not leading, it blinds us to options that we didn't know we had. Because again, if we're consensus seeking, those are the rules that we're playing the game. Those are the rules of the game for us at that point, if we're seeking consensus. And so we're not going to see anything outside that narrow range of options. So if this is the range of options that we'll consider, anything out here, it won't even enter into our consciousness. So what I want to say right off is don't assume that families won't go along with you, provided you interact with them the correct way, a creative way, and provided you offer leadership at this point and not reactivity. So provide leadership, not reactivity. ask the right kinds of questions and interact with them in a certain way, and you will get a different result than if you had just assumed that everyone's in panic mode right now. People are worried about their jobs. Right now is the worst time in the world to be advertising lessons for my studio. Again, if this is the mindset, the fixed mindset that you're in, you're gonna blind yourself to a whole range of options that are actually available to you right now. So that's where I would start. So for years, I've kind of taken the position that if I really need something to go a certain way in my studio, that I need to get 7 steps ahead of my client base. That I need to be thinking their thoughts before they think them. And that if I can, in advance, plan the interaction that I'm going to have with those families, that it greatly increases the chances that families are going to go along with what my plan is. Okay? So here at 11:06 a.m. is my recommended process for getting parents to adopt online lessons in your studio. And I'm just going to go through this right now. The very first thing you should be doing is reaching out. By the way, and I'm going to even give this before I start. There are still people on the fence as to whether they even want to do this. There are still people not sure if families are going to accept this. And there are also people watching that have already started online lessons. Even if you already have, it would be valuable for you to do this process. So even if you've already started online lessons, it would be valuable for you to do this process. Although what you do with the process will be slightly different, and I think you'll see why in just a second. But the very first thing that I would do is reach out to a few trusted families and ask questions. And what I will say, it is fascinating to me the number of people that wrote in on the survey where I asked for questions for this stream. And the question they wrote in and asked was, how can I respond to those who are scared or skeptical about online lessons? And my question for you is, why would you ask me? Why don't you ask your customers? Let that sink in. Instead of asking me, look, and I know, I don't want to be unfair. I realize that I invited questions. But instead of asking me or other music teachers, why not ask the very people that you're trying to influence? Oftentimes, your customers, your clients, will tell you how that they can be persuaded. If you care enough to ask, and if you care enough to listen and really think through what they're saying to you. This is what I have based my entire career on. It's what I have based my entire career in terms of being a studio owner, in terms of advising studios, ranging in size from they're starting out, 0 students. Just had someone contact me literally within the last 24 hours saying, hey, we have 0 students right now. We're wanting to start an academy. We want help. Can you help us? All the way up to my largest client right now that does just shy of $2 million a year in revenue. The advice is the same across the board. Whether you're starting out, whether you're established, no matter what size your revenue, your customers, your potential clients will tell you how to influence them if you just listen. And so right now, what I would do is reach out to a few trusted families and either send them an email and ask a question, or get on the phone with them, better yet, and say, hey, listen, this is what's going to be happening in the studio. Not, hey, buddy, I'm thinking about doing online lessons. What do you think about that? Just don't, okay? This is what's going to be happening in the studio over the next 7 to 14 days. And I'm really just reaching out because I want to understand the experience from your end. You could write that in an email. You could send that by, you could ask that by phone. And then just listen. Ask questions. Don't take the very first thing that they say and just accept it as truth. Probe. Ask follow-up questions. So what I'm gonna be doing is essentially the same as what I did before. I'm still gonna be delivering the same lesson experience. We're still gonna be making progress from week to week. The only difference is that you don't have to come to my studio now. And there'll be kind of a setup. I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts about that? Listen to what they say. If it's primarily positive, ask them to go into why they think it's a positive thing. You're gonna get reasons, which are often more important than just the straight answer. Do the 5 whys. This is an old marketing technique. Keep asking your customer why. Why that? Oh, interesting. Well, why? Oh, that's interesting. Why? Just keep going. because you're going to keep uncovering all the thinking that they have around this, and you're really going to understand exactly what their fears are, where their pain points are right now, why they might potentially say yes to you, why they might potentially say no to you. And then in advance, like Bobby Fischer playing chess, you can be 7 steps ahead of everyone and address all that in a really awesomely persuasive, nicely worded email that goes out to your studio that sets you up for success, because you already know, because you've talked to 5 different families in the studio, or 10 or 15, you already know what the objections are going to be. You address them in the email. You already know what the concerns are going to be. You address them in the email. You already know why people might say yes to you. You really highlight those things. You already know why people are going to say no to you. You downplay those things. So, the fundamental flaw in failed businesses is that they didn't understand what their customers wanted or needed, and they just talked about boring details. And boring details right now look like sending out emails talking about how Zoom works. That would not be the first email I send out to families. Sending out emails about how they really need to support the studio at this time. That may be true. Sending out emails about how it's so important for kids to maintain continuity in their life and these sorts of things, without really connecting it to some sort of story, without really being empathetic to what parents are saying. If it feels self-serving, it's just going to come across as needy or creepy. And I would really get into the emotional shoes of families in the studio, ask those questions, understand what they're feeling in advance, and then move to address those concerns in a persuasive email. Okay, now I'm going to look at some of the things in the chat here, because there's a lot that came in as I was saying that. So Ashley asked, would you think sending a survey to your entire studio would be a good idea? I would actually, yes, but I would talk to a few people first so you even know what questions to ask on that survey. We're in really uncharted territory right now, and when I'm in uncharted territory and I'm not sure how to respond to something, the number one thing I do is go out and ask questions. It's honestly part of the reason why I even am doing this. I knew I could be helpful by doing something like this, but what's far more fascinating to me is to look at all of the questions that are coming in from the teachers, and for me to understand the mindset in the community right now, because it's going to impact my marketing over the next 3 to 6 months, just being very flatly honest. It's going to impact my marketing on how I reach out to studios at this time. And since I have never been in a situation like this before, it would be arrogant of me to assume that I know what everyone's thinking. It would be arrogant of me to create marketing or to create growth material that doesn't address concerns and is honestly boring and tone deaf, which is what I warned people of being earlier. I'm taking my own advice. I have to be really humble and sensitive in this time in terms of the messages that I'm sending to my clients, of people who might be prospective clients, what I'm advising my clients to say to their studios right now. And since we've never been through something like this before, the fundamental posture that I'm taking is one that is open, that is generous towards other people, that is receptive, that isn't cynical or skeptical or assuming that I know better than other people. And I think this is the same thing that this is the same empathy that we should take on for our clients in studios. So, let's see. Maria said there's a delicate balance between making the online lessons so great that the parents start to ask for them permanently, but also let them see what a great program we have within studio group lessons. She had a parent say to me, this is so awesome, I think we might want to stay with this. That's interesting. Look, we're not coming back from this untouched, everyone. There's a permanent change that's going to happen in our society and potentially in our industry as a result of this. A lot of eyes are being opened right now, and there might be a permanent subset of music teachers that go out there and really kill it in the online space after this, simply because this pushed them out of their comfort zone and they saw an opportunity they never saw before. And the excuses, which I wrote about on Monday, the excuses that we all had for not doing this in the past, they're all gone now. We were forced. Life, the world, forced our hand. And we're not coming back from this. There will be changes. So, Kelly, who is honestly should be a thought leader in her own right. Kelly is one of the very first clients I ever had. She said, I assumed my students would make the change to online. On Sunday, I emailed, basically, the studio is going online, send your new availability. 24 hours later, I announced the new schedule and sent instructions. I converted 100% of my 34 group students to online groups. So Kelly is awesome. She's made some incredible resources that she shared inside our client community. And it doesn't surprise me. And I'm actually going to address this in a little bit, this retention problem a little bit more, because I haven't quite finished here yet. So anyway, okay, yes. Is it wiser to jump in ASAP to online or wait a week to get it right? I would move as fast as you possibly can. That's what I would do. Maybe studios could even offer a live stream Q&A for families. Talia, brilliant. Talia's writing this in from London, one of my marketing clients. Yes, do something like this. Steal the name, Quaran-Stream. It could be really, really good. I would promote it very heavily beforehand with your studio folks. I would solicit questions in advance. That way you don't get online and then it be crickets. There's several thousand people that follow Grow Your Music Studio. I knew that if I came online, I would get questions. But even then, I preferred to get them in advance so that I had a chance to really kind of thoughtfully think through the questions in advance. If you're operating with a studio that has 50 clients, it very well might be that 2 or 3 people show up. And if they don't have questions, it's going to be crickets that might, feel a little awkward. What you could do is announce it in advance, ask for questions, get 4 or 5 questions, write them on an iPad like I have here, read the questions, answer them, and then for the people that didn't show up, send the link out after it's over, answering the questions that everybody had, and it'll be, really valuable. Ashley said, "Can I be honest? I don't even know what to ask them." I think she wrote that before I said what to ask them. Let's see. Kelly said she had 2 open houses on Zoom the day before lesson started. That's awesome. Okay, I'm caught up. All right. So, getting back to how to retain students at this time, once you've really learned the concerns or fears they have, you are now armed with knowledge. You can go write an email. And I kind of detailed what could be in that email. Avoid boring details. What you want to go for at this point is a marketing technique that, honestly, if I could remember where to source this from, I would tell you right now, I don't remember where I heard this. But it's advice that was so simple and so obvious that it's just stuck with me for years. And I'm just going to read it here. If you want to sell something ordinary and familiar, make it feel new. But if you want to sell something that's new or unfamiliar, make it feel familiar and ordinary. This is brilliant advice. In the email that you send out to families, I would start with a story. You might even, as Pat said, Pat said she hasn't moved online yet. You might do a few trial sessions with people and record them. And then have some stories of success. Take a screenshot of Zoom and you and the student in the room and send that out. Tell the story of the awesome lesson that those kids had. You will get more leverage out of a story than a 5,000 word email that talks just about how amazing online lessons are. You will persuade more people with a story than you will with facts and reason. There is just another old adage, another old rule of thumb in marketing that when you start trying to sell someone or convince someone, that's when people's defenses go up. It's like shields up. If you tell a story, people settle back. Oh, it's story time. And they're far more receptive to a message that is embedded in it. And you will persuade more people telling a story of the couple lessons you had this week and how we're going completely online next week. Okay? So that's part 1. And the second thing is I would emphasize in all the ways that this is the exact same experience that they're used to. The only difference is it's more convenient for you now because you don't even have to leave the home. That is what I would do. Make the offer. Hey, sign up for a time here, or we can keep your old time. And again, assume something. Assume that they're just going to say yes. If you were assuming they were just going to say yes, you are going to write a different email than had you assumed that they were going to say no. It's how the brain works. Now, part 3, and this one's a little tough. I debated whether to even bring this up because it's a little bit of a harder thing. I am noticing something right now. And by the way, I just got to say, you all are very patient. There's more people online right now than has ever been on a live stream before. And I just think you all are awesome for kind of sticking around and keep the questions coming. I'm going to answer them. Anyway, part 3, I am seeing something. Clients of mine who typically don't have a retention problem are still not having a retention problem. I mentioned a client earlier who said that out of his 60 or 70 students, he's only had 5 quit and 3 were unrelated to the virus. Only 2 quit as a result of the virus. In general, he hasn't had a retention problem in the past. this situation is almost a diagnostic of sorts. If there are retention problems right now, what I would say is that those people were probably halfway out the door anyway. And if you had a ton of people that were halfway out the door, and this is what sent them over the edge, it makes a suggestion that the product pillar of your studio might be weak. And again, this is not something that, I know we're kind of in a tough time right now. And I certainly don't want to rub salt in any kind of wound. But if you have a ton of people right now that are saying, I just don't think we're going to do this right now. This is a diagnostic. Here's how I would respond to that. This is a time to get super creative and to start looking at the product pillar of your business. What kind of results are you getting? Is it taking a child 1.5 years to get through their first book? Can we bring that down to a year? Can we bring that down to 6 months? How would we do that? This is something that I had to take into account over a decade ago when I switched to group lessons. Because I had again, this was a format change. However, it wasn't forced upon me. I made the decision myself. And what I discovered was that people that weren't too pleased with the results they were getting with me anyway did not stick around once I made this format change. Or they really, really resisted it because they had doubt in my ability to deliver in a format that they saw as inferior. And so I will say this again. Retention isn't about hacks or gimmicks. It's not about giving out attendance bracelets or all sizzle, no steak, flashy, promotional type things. I had the most boring studio program on the planet. 2 recitals a year, a very plain weekly program, very little technology in my studio. Over the last 5 years, decreasing communication with families, getting a lot more focused on just repertoire acquisition. I stopped all games in my studios. I stopped all prizes and promotional type things in my studios, and my retention just kept going up. Why was that the case? Because the actual thing that the parents were there for their child to be a good musician, kept getting better and better. And as I saw that all those gimmicks and promotions and things that distracted me from the core educational experience, as I saw all those things go away, I actually had more time to focus on that core educational experience. And in truth, as I put away some of those promotional, flashy, gimmicky things, I had time to do more substantive things like join my studio to the Royal Conservatory of Music. And put my kids through the rigors of that. Made me a better teacher, made the students better players. That's what I'm talking about here. And so what you can do at this time, focus kids on repertoire acquisition. Maybe even take the extra time that you have because you're cutting other social or external activities out of your life. Maybe offer some free sessions just to do experimentation, just to say, hey, I'm offering an hour-long, this Zoom room can hold 100 people. Every student come at this time, and I just want to hear you practice. And you can practice live with me. And since you don't have the physical constraints of a space, I'm in my studio room right now. Since you don't have the physical constraints of a space, you can use the opportunity to learn things about how your students practice, to see their work ethic. Because if kids, see 18 other kids there is a little bit of a feeling of anonymity at this point. And they might do things that they wouldn't do if they were just in front of you. I'm not saying this should replace their normal lesson. I'm saying get creative and use this opportunity to see what you can add value, to see what kind of value you can add at this point, and even to, again, like I said at the very beginning of this, almost an hour ago, I lost my train of thought because I focused too much on my iPad. To challenge some of those sacred cows that we have in the industry, and even some sacred cows that we're holding ourselves. Here's the funny thing. We're an hour in. I'm only about a third of the way through what I was doing, so I better hurry it up here because I want to get to the second part of this marketing plan. And I have a coaching call coming up with a client who actually I think is on this live stream right now. Okay, let's see. Lost my place here. Okay, so yes, to sum up what I was just saying there, if you get the education component right, the retention issue will take care of itself. And the dirty secret of my marketing and is that it all works better for me and it works better for my clients who have this down is the education piece. And I want to tell you the process that I went through to kind of get to that place. And I want to talk to you about eighth notes. I struggled the first 5 years that I taught with teaching eighth notes to my students. They were uneven, they couldn't count, they struggled to count. I had to constantly tell the students, count, 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 thinking that if I just got them to count, that their rhythm would get better. Not understanding that the rhythm, that internal thing, was never going to come through an external tool like counting or metronomes. And I learned this the hard way. And I focused and obsessed about it for so long that it blinded me to other options. And then at a certain point, I had this realization, the common point between all of these students that can't count is me. What I've been doing is not working. And so this was a couple years in to my teaching career. I systematically began trying all these sorts of things, even from week to week, trying different ways. I came up with tons of different ways to teach eighth notes, tons of different ways to teach rhythm, tons of different ways to teach counting, while also simultaneously trying to find tons of different ways to help my kids who were struggling to remember where middle C was in the staff, or finding that home position. Struggling to help kids figure out how to do their dotted rhythms. Again, trying to help them understand one and, two and. And what I'm saying is that I did not stop until I found something that worked with 99% of kids. And I honestly think that the secret to the retention for me was in the educational component and making it feel easy for kids. And I don't know if I've ever publicly revealed as much as I did right there, like what that process was for me. It's something that I touch upon. It's one of the many things I touch upon in the Successful Group Lessons program that I teach. It's a very small part of it. But that was kind of the process I went through. It was a long, arduous process. It was very frustrating to keep trying to find that thing that worked. And another part of it, and then I'll move on here to the external marketing plan. Another part of it was simply the fact that because I wasn't sure if it was going to work, if I didn't believe it was going to work, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I wasn't sure if it was going to work, I half-heartedly taught it. I didn't teach it with confidence, and therefore the kids didn't pick it up with confidence, and it influenced it. So as I built confidence in certain methods, it actually helped the kids. And then I taught it more aggressively, and I taught it with more strength and power. And the kids assimilated it more to the point where just on down the line with all the typical problems that kids had in learning music and some of these concepts that have to be internalized before they can really become good and skillful, right down the line, all of these concepts, I started seeing massive improvements with the kids and then seeing massive improvements in my retention for the studio. And I didn't need to give out bracelets. I didn't need to give out prizes or super bucks like I used to do in the Piano Express program. I would just say that this is now an opportunity, again, to challenge sacred cows and to reinvent the teaching, and the retention will follow. Okay, got another question here. And we will get to the external marketing in just a second, but this was another internal marketing question. What does your funnel of emails look like? What do they each say? Would love to know more about how to write a funnel for prospective students. And then I had another question come in recently. What is your feeling on Active Campaign, which is just a customer manager, where basically you put people into an autoresponder where they automatically get emails from you that you don't have to send out yourself. What is your feeling on Active Campaign with some type of landing page for building a new program fairly quickly? We're adding an early childhood music program, and we need to get it fully attended for September. I'm new to email marketing with an automated approach, and frankly, I wonder and doubt if it's even the right approach for our business. So, to both of these questions, here's what I would say. I do not use a traditional sales funnel approach for families in my studio. And the reason I don't is it's not personal enough. I don't use any sort of automated email marketing for people who might be prospective leads. What I do use automated email marketing for is people within my studio. So once someone joins my studio, that's when I really begin to aggressively market to people. And that's where I put them in an autoresponder. And in my masterclass, I talk about, like I have a 9-month email sequence that I give away in the masterclass that shows how to market to families internally. So I know I was just kind of saying that, the big secret to retention is helping kids become really, really good at education. The other component of that is that if parents don't realize how valuable you are, you can be doing that, but they'll undervalue you. And so for me, internal marketing looks a lot like helping parents see the value of what we're already doing and learning how to communicate that to them in a substantive way. Also, I just want to take a break from what I'm saying right here to say that several people are saying, hey, what's the 8th note method? What I would recommend is maybe going back and watching the replay once we're done here. This will be available, and go to about 50 minutes in, and you'll see, you can kind of see me go through that whole line of thinking. So that's my recommendation. I don't recommend automating the external front-end marketing process. It's just too impersonal. Much better to make a personal contact with families from the very beginning. And if you're a large studio, I would even make the same recommendation. One of my clients right now, they actually have a full-time salesperson that does that handles all of their inbound lesson requests. Follows up with them by phone, follows up with them by email, gives them a personal experience from the very beginning. They have the budget that they could go totally automated and be super cold and personal. They choose not to. Very wise of them, because they've grown very large with this strategy. So I don't recommend automating that beginning process. Next question. I'm starting online lessons April 1st for approximately 27 piano students. These are one-to-one lessons. What are ways for me to receive payments? I need something that I can do now without setting up something on my website. I have no capacity to change my website right now. Let's see. Some people send me monthly payments via the postal service. Are there payment options that I can easily do electronically? This was an easy one. I wanted to knock this out really fast. My recommendation is to use Fons, F-O-N-S. It's an app. Someone in our community actually developed this app. His name is Eric Branner. Really cool, nice guy. A lot of people on this stream right now use Fons. In the meantime, if you want to get set up with this very, very quickly, I would, and only as a temporary measure, potentially just use PayPal and send an invoice. The beauty of using an app like Fons or some of these other, kind of all-in-one studio management apps like Music Teacher's Helper, Teacher Zone, you can do automated payments. And if you are in a place where you're not doing electronic payments, which I think very few people probably are at that point or have not yet converted over that, I would definitely, if you jump to digital payment, do automated. Don't do invoicing, because you're just going to be chasing people down. And if you still are doing invoicing or you're waiting for people on you, get people on an automated system. It's just going to save so much time and headache. So I thought I would do that. Okay. This is the other big one. External marketing. So we talked about how I would handle things internally to get families on board. Now let's go external. So here's the question. How does one find students interested in online lessons? The students I teach online were already my in-studio students, and I would like to find new ones. I teach all ages. And then another question that came in a few days ago. Some of my clients are flatly uninterested in continuing lessons until after the outbreak. How can I recruit online students while we're all essentially under quarantine? And then they also asked, and where are the students who want group lessons? Is it at a lower rate that attracts them? Are group lessons longer than private? But I want to focus mostly on getting online students. I'm going to give away some data here that I guarantee 98% of the people on this stream right now have never heard. This is fascinating stuff. I actually did a little bit of research before coming on this, so hang around for about 5 minutes, because frankly, I think this data is going to blow your mind. I will also say I love these questions. You know what? I should have gotten some water. I wish one of you could run to my kitchen right now and get some water. Okay. I love these questions because the answer is so much simpler, and I really enjoy simplifying things for people. So there's all these questions right now, and I'm seeing it in the teacher forums, the studio owner forums. How do we advertise online lessons? I had a client, hey, how can we quickly transfer all of our ad campaigns over to online lessons and focus on online lessons? Here is the strategy. You are not going to find people who want group, or I'm going to give you the proof. Uh-oh. Okay, let's see. All right, perfect. It says I lost my connection there for a minute. Okay, so perfect. You are not going to find people who want group or who want online lessons. And I'm going to give you proof right now. You can go and find, the data is out there. The data is out there on how many people search for certain things on Google every single month. It's not down to the exact, person, but it's within a acceptable range of error, like 3 to 5%. Right now, in the United States, 40,500 people look for piano lessons each month. They literally type that into Google search. Piano lessons. Right now, if you type in online piano, the number of people typing in online piano lessons into Google search per month is 6,600 people. And the number of people who type in group piano lessons, okay, get this, 260 people a month in the entire United States type in group piano lessons. This is the data straight from Google. Here's what this means. People aren't looking for that. And if they're not looking for it, you shouldn't be advertising it. No one here needs to start advertising online lessons. I know this is kind of a bold statement to make because I have been seeing other people say like, hey, here's what you should do. Here's the ad campaign you should start to really emphasize this. You don't need to do it. Because the flip side of that is that if you do try to advertise for those things, you're going to automatically turn people off. Because again, Google is showing us what people are actually looking for and what they actually want, and they don't want it. So if you are actually unselling your lessons if you're trying to sell those things. So don't try to sell those things. What you should sell is music lessons, or more specifically, the result that your studio gives children or adults, if you teach them, if they come to your studio and go through your program. So people aren't even really looking for music lessons. They're actually looking for, I want to play really well and impress my friends. I want my child to be well developed. I want them to be well-rounded. Keep advertising the way that you are. That is the message I would give to you right now. Because again, going back to what I said about 10 to 20 minutes in, this is all empathy. It's understanding what people think and responding to what they're thinking. Just advertise your lessons, emphasize the result they'll get, and when the format comes, when it comes time to talk about the way that you're doing format, you will learn over time how to address this. We're not going to be perfect right here at the beginning at addressing this. There is no script right now. I don't have one. We're going to figure this out very quickly as an industry. But 70% of the work is done for you if in the way that they discover you, you talk about the result that those kids are going to get over time, or that adult student's going to get over time, and maybe pay some lip service to, yes, we're addressing, we are still running lessons even amidst this. We have a very unique way that we teach that will help you learn while you're stuck indoors. That could be some great copy. Go test it out. I'm not sure if it'll work, but I'm not sure any of my advertising will work. I never do. I'm always learning. So that's how I would do it. And here's the proof that I have that what the advice that I'm giving to you right now is actually worth following. I consider it a huge achievement in my own studio that I rarely had people reject my group lesson program once they came in and met me. Remember, 40,000 people a month looking for piano lessons, 260 people a month looking for group piano lessons. My studio was entirely group. I could count on one hand the number of times in a decade that I had people reject my studio over the group lesson thing, because I focused on what actually mattered to families, and I shepherded them into not being concerned about the format. So I consider it a colossal achievement that I've helped nearly 250 studios go through the same thing with group lessons, where they've kind of taken that messaging, adopted it for their own studio, and they've had the same or similar result, where people just didn't really care all that much about the format. And the secret behind all of this is to not focus on the format. Don't change your entire marketing program, especially if it works, simply because of this temporary situation. Address it to the degree that people are saying it, but mostly focus on what I said before. So, okay, I'm looking at the rest. I've got a lot here. It could be that we might need to extend this to another day, because there are a lot of questions here that I have yet to answer. And my voice is getting very, very tired. And we've been at this about an hour and 45 minutes now, or an hour and 15 minutes, my fault. So here's what I think we're going to do. I think we're going to end this for right now. I'm going to look through the comments right before we go and just see what people are saying. And I think I might go live tomorrow again. Probably not going to publicize it as much this time. But if you want to join me, I've got probably a good 30 to 60 minutes of questions I hadn't yet addressed yet that people asked. I just didn't realize it was going to go this long. I'm actually really surprised. So let me just look through the comments here, see what questions we have. Let's see. People want to know how I actually teach eighth notes. Okay, and actually, Debbie, you know because you've been through my Successful Group Lesson program. So that is, there's a lot of assumptions baked in. The way that I teach eighth notes doesn't just depend on how I teach eighth notes. It also depends on how I taught kids in the first 3 lessons that they were with me. So if I had another 6 hours, I could kind of go through all of that. And if you could observe the way that I teach kids in the first couple lessons, because what I do there is directly connected to the result they get 9 months later when they start 2A. And so I really go into depth in the SGL program. This might be something that in the future, if I just want to dedicate an entire stream to kind of talking about that, I might be able to do that, but that would be a really tough topic to cover right now. Similarly, there were people asking like, what is my 9-month email thing? That's something I teach in the masterclass. And again, it's not just that. There's assumptions baked into what's going on with those 9 months in how I even communicate with my families, which is all based on the foundational work that I do with my masterclass students at the beginning of that experience, which a lot of people on here have gone through it. Let's see. Actually, my wife is on the road right now. My father-in-law is being discharged from the hospital and she has to go pick him up. Let's see. It's very funny, Maria. That's why they couldn't get me water. But I could yell for Calvin, I guess. Let's see. Google Keyword Planner. Use this to see what people search for. Good idea, Brett. Also, you can use a tool called SEMrush. I used to have a pro subscription to that, and then I just stopped needing it. Let's see. I started with Teacher Zone in January, and I'm very underwhelmed with the... Okay, never mind. Let's see. Okay. Would love a continuation. Would you offer one-on-one online lessons of all? I have in the past, Pat. I have done one-on-one lessons in the past online, but I don't do one-on-one lessons anymore. So, oh yes, online introductory class. What if prospective students don't have a piano? That was actually a question that someone wrote in, and then now someone else here, Karen, is asking it. I'm going to deal with that tomorrow. I definitely am going to get online tomorrow. Maybe even, well, I have to check my schedule. But I'll probably be online sometime tomorrow and answer a bunch more questions. But that's one of the questions that that someone asked that I have a really creative solution for if they don't have a piano. So, clickbait. Come back tomorrow if you want to learn my really creative solution. Okay. So anyway, thank you for sticking with me, folks. This has been really awesome and kind of, I'm really humbled that you would stick with me and listen to me talk for an hour. Really cool. And I'm going to come back online tomorrow. I'll probably send out another email today. I'll get one of my team members to send out an email just talking about when I'll be online tomorrow. And we will keep answering questions. If you have more, go back to that link, drop them in the survey link, and I will be back online tomorrow and finish this up. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day. Stay positive. Stay healthy. We'll see you later.